Nigeria has recorded a spike in cases of domestic violence since the lockdown imposed on cities to curb the spread of coronavirus. This is because the restrictions forced vulnerable persons to stay more with their attackers. In Lagos alone, there was a 60% increase in domestic violence, according to the State Domestic and Gender Violence Response Team during the peak of the lockdown. Joining me now via Skype is Bosun, lawyer and social development advocate. It's good to have you join me right now, Bosun. It's quite troubling, the numbers of domestic violence that had risen even during the pandemic, when it's supposed to be time of reconciliation if you had issues with your spouse or a family member or something. Talk to us, what could have given rise to this?
Sincerely, I think a lot of factors are responsible, but primarily it's because we have not been seeing too many convictions in that regard. Because one of the major deterrents you can have is conviction of offenders. But in this climb, it's rather unfortunate that most times victims don't even come up to speak, one. And in situations where they come out and speak, we don't see much action, particularly on the part of the police. And I know we're still going to look at the recent case, but one of the videos I saw in respect was when a family of a victim went to the police, and at the end of the day, the police were still blaming them and asking them for funny things. And, you know, these are things that can actually discourage people from going ahead to make cases. And when people don't see convictions, when people don't see anything that actually stops this from happening, then you would definitely have a rise. You have an increase in such offenses happening.
All right. Now, as the world becomes, or let me say, as the country rises in its status of metropolitanness, if I have to use that, any statement, any word like that, for Lagos, for Abuja, or for Kano, or for River State, for instance, where there are more people, there is more activity, there are more industries, and people are getting more busy by the day, and all of that. The economic and societal or social pressure, could that be the reason why people are not as tolerant as they used to be?
No. That has nothing to do with economic situation.
All right.
It's more of a personal decision. In fact, studies have shown that sexual violent offenders are not even particular about self. They are particular about asserting themselves, show of power, bringing pain out of victims. So those are the instances. It's got nothing to do with economy. You might have one or two instances where somebody gets frustrated and but that's not the way out. So what you have really is people who some are mental cases, but I wouldn't want to blame it on the economy. If the economy is harsh on you, maybe you take to alcohol, then that now leads to you misbehaving, but that's quite remote. But sexual offenses or sexual violence offenses basically it's an internal thing. And sometimes also you find that the society allows things like this to fester, particularly when it comes to things like religion. You know, we have this culture of somebody offends you, just forgive, just let it slide. And so when you have things like that, you find that people will just take the liberty to act anyhow.
Well, the point there is, talking about religion, the point there is more Nigerians seem to be really religious when it comes to their professed commitment or what you get to see. But how much, if we narrow it down to the connect and the impact and the effect that religion is having on the people, depending on whatever religion one becomes, because we profess these things, how much of that impact is going down on people's lives on a daily basis?
Well, the religious teachings actually abhor sexual violence. Now, but the problem is how many people listen to these teachings? Then also when they listen to it, religion is just one side, it's just one agent of the many agents that are there to actually stem and curb this criminal activity. But you find out that I would rather blame it more on maybe the police or a defective system that we have, because a system where you go and report and they say, okay, forgive the offender, or you go and report and they ask, what were you even doing there in the first place? Or you go and report to the authority and there's no visible, there's no palpable action taken against the offender. That's where you now have increase in things like this. But where punishment is meted out on the person almost immediately, then also delay in our justice system. It's that one has been with us, and it's quite unfortunate. And those are the things. Then also, because if you look at it, if justice delayed, they say it's justice denied. So where that doesn't happen, people just act anyhow until we begin to have legislations and also enforcers that see this thing as a crime and that go against this thing vehemently. Then we may still have to live with this anomaly for a long time.
All right. This discussion is going to continue because there are so many aspects that we have to look at as we get along. Thank you so much, Barrister Bosun, for your time on the program. Good morning there. Thanks for joining us on TVC Breakfast. You can watch us online. We are streaming live on YouTube. You can also connect with us on Twitter using the hashtag TVC Breakfast. Nigeria has recorded a spike in cases of domestic violence since a lockdown imposed on cities to curb the spread of the coronavirus. Now, this is because the restrictions forced vulnerable persons to stay more with their attackers. Now, in Lagos alone, there was a 60% increase in domestic violence, according to the state's domestic and gender violence response team during the peak of the lockdown. All right, joining me now via Skype is Bosun Oshifora. He's a lawyer and social development advocate. Bosun, good morning. It's good to have you join me right now. Now, let me take it from the perspective of deterrence against any of violence against anyone. Now, it's against the law by every means, whether it's with the Constitution, because everyone has his own freedom and has his own rights and stuff. But the police, on the other hand, is meant to ensure that they arrest those who are offenders. Talk to us about police as a committed partner in the fight against such kind of violence. How much of a committed partner would you say they are?
I try to run away from casting aspersions or playing down the effort of the police. Sincerely, these are men and women who put their lives and time online, and they work assiduously to save us and help us out. But that is not also shying away from the fact that there are some instances where the police has not been adequate, particularly with respect to curbing issues like this. And I'll tell you, I think it stems more from the kind of orientation we have. I have been personally involved in cases where we went to report something as simple as rape, molestation, and the kind of questions that the police were asking, particularly at the divisional police, they call it the ones within the area, where the divisional police unit, where they were asking us things, and it wasn't as if they were siding with the offender, but they were asking things like, okay, what were you doing in his house? How did you go there? Did you do this? Did you do that? And I found that very offensive. And I realized that the police actually needs proper orientation and reorientation, particularly as it relates to domestic violence and sexual violence crime, because our society is largely chauvinistic, and there's this tendency to side with the offender, not necessarily inadvertently siding with the offender. And at the end of the day, most times they don't push for this thing. So it lies with the police to cooperate. The laws are there. There are no bad laws. The laws are always adequate. But it's for the police is in the line. The police is the part where the thing has to be effected. The police will connect the victim with the court by bringing statements and bringing all the necessary things, filing charges against the offender. But largely, the police has been lacking. In fact, to show you, if you look at the recent case, everybody was practically jubilating that the president has stepped in, the governors have stepped in, and everybody was ordering the police to go ahead and do this. That is not supposed to be the situation. Nobody needs to order the police to do that. It is the job of the police. The president doesn't have to step in and start ordering the IG or the commissioner of police to make sure that the offenders are apprehended and all that. That shows you that there's still something wrong with police and policing as it concerns sexual violence and also domestic violence.
All right, when it comes to the law and policies, I guess we're not in lack of adequate policies covering those areas. But what is the missing link between where those laws exist and where on the field or at homes or wherever it is, these acts are still being perpetrated? What's the missing link there?
Well, the missing link, one, has to do with societal understanding. Sincerely speaking, if you look at the laws, in fact, the extant law is the Violence Against Persons Prohibitions Act 2015. The law expanded the concept of rape. In fact, it went as far as saying that something as simple as watching someone who is engaged in sexual activity without the person's consent is an offense. It's that wide. So the laws are adequate. But now the missing link is this. One, you have a society where people feel, if I go out now, if a lady comes out and say, I was a victim of rape, there's a way people will look at that person. You can't walk well on the streets. People will look at, that's a lady that was raped. And that's the kind of society. And nobody says anything about the offender. People come, I think some weeks ago we saw someone come on Facebook and he said, I just beat up my wife. I'm looking for the police that will arrest me. Thank goodness the state authority came out. But one, you have a debt of reporting. That's people don't go out and report because they feel the backlash on them in the society won't be too nice. And when you don't report, nobody knows what happens to you. Now that's one. Then also you have, we talked earlier about the concept of forgiving. You may even forgive the offender, but that doesn't stop the person from being punished. I may have forgiven you for the wrong you have done to me, but I will still report to the police, because if you allow someone to go, that's how you create serial offenders. And at the end of the day, you have more victims. And I can tell you confidently that the damage that sexual violence and domestic violence does to people is almost eternal. People live with it forever. People's lives get, tumbled, and they just can't become themselves again. And a lot of people live with this hurt. So the society must come to the understanding that we have to report these crimes. We should not allow people to go. Then also, organizations, religious organizations should come out and tell people that even if you took a lady to a restaurant, even if you spent ₦1 million on somebody and the person comes to your house, no means no. Don't look at how much you have spent, because that's another thing. That is what goes on in the society. You feel I've expended money, and why would you tell me no? If I say no, then I mean no. If I want it, I will tell you. I'm old enough to know. That's even for those who are older. Then there's a case of defilement, which we have seen. So too many things. The laws are good, but the problem we have is that people don't report. We also have a society that side more with the offender than the victim. So these are the things we have to do. That's where the missing link is. So the laws are there. The police, in some cases, they even act up. But if you don't come and report, if you play it down, if you sweep it under the carpet, you're only creating problems for the society.
All right. So thank you so much, Barrister Bosun for your time on the program. We really appreciate you.